Everybody says that the right thing to do is to help others. But what if that's just what people say that are weak, that are trying to get strong people to do what they want? In other words, what if our only rational choice is to benefit ourselves? Let's consider. Hello, philosophers. I'm Chico. Welcome to the Philosopher Show, where we consider the greatest questions of human history. I'm going to mention a scenario from a book. I don't want you to think right off the bat that I am endorsing it or that I'm rejecting it either. This is a book that has resonated very much with some people in American politics. So right off the bat, I don't want you to think like that I'm advocating for one thing or another here. But it definitely best illustrates the point that I'm trying to make today, or I guess the point I'm trying to teach about today. This book is called Atlas Shrugged by Ayn Rand. And by the way, I'm going to do a book review on this a little bit later this week. And in this book, Dagny Taggart is a very competent businesswoman. She is the vice president of her grandfather's railroad company. This is, I think, like 1950s-ish. It's supposed to be like an alternate United States that seems to be failing. And her brother, James Taggart, is the president of this company. And he does a very poor job. And constantly, Dagny is having to correct his mistakes, cover for him, and stuff like that. And the whole time she's just propping this guy up, right? She is propping up a failing businessman and a failing business. And the question is, she's presented with the possibility eventually of leaving all that behind, going to a place where she will be respected, where she will be able to truly, get the benefit for all of her hard work, and she's left with the question: do I just abandon this business and my brother and go benefit myself, or do I stay here and just try to keep things afloat? So the view we're talking about today is called rational egoism, and it is the technical definition is it is necessary and sufficient for a choice to be rational that it benefits you. In other words, a choice cannot be rational unless it benefits you, maximizes your benefit, actually is the way that they say it, and a choice that maximizes your benefit is automatically rational. So in this scenario, if you think about the different possibilities, Dagny could stay around to help others, right? To help her brother and to help Americans in general. She could stick around out of the sake of duty, right? To duty to her family, her grandfather's name, her company, or something like that. Or she could leave to benefit herself. The question is, the big question I think would be like, what would you do? In that situation, when it seems like all of your good work is just being credited by another, it seems almost masochistic to stick around, right? So. And the question is, what would you do? And if your answer is, I would leave, it seems like that's the most reasonable thing to do, then the rational egoist would say, yeah, that's exactly right. That it seems like when we have this criterion of self-benefit, we capture all the rational choices, things that we typically would take to be rational, right? So yeah, there it is, rational egoism. As I said, this is a view that is captures the imagination of a lot of American politicians. So if you live in the United States, right, this is something that's important to understand. The problem I would say with this view, and I should, so I've given you an argument just now, right? I've told you why it seems reasonable in that scenario. I'm going to give you a couple of objections to this view. Again, I'm giving this to you so that you make up your mind. Not so that I'm telling you what to think. But one of the objections I would say to this view starts off by pointing out that it is the big problem is not so much saying that it is rational to benefit yourself. The big problem is to say that the only rational thing, the only thing that makes sense to do is to benefit yourself. Surely the people would say that are objecting to this view, surely it would make sense to do something for a different reason. So here's the first objection. To be rational is to follow by way of acceptable human reasoning. Right? In other words, when I say the word rational, all I mean is you got to some conclusion by a legitimate way of reasoning, either by deductive logic, inductive logic, scientific method, something like that. Right? But in order to do that, in order to reason as humans, we need to start off with some fundamental beliefs. Right? So, for example, one of them would be that our rational faculties are not deceiving us. Right? That it's not the case that when we say, if A then B, A therefore B, that our minds are tricking us. The justification for these beliefs, these fundamental beliefs, are going to be something like, because we just have to, assume these, like with our reasoning, or maybe they're self-evident, truths. Maybe there's something that they just prove themselves. Maybe they're part of a system of reasoning, a greater system of reasoning, and they just work with that system of reasoning, and that's the reason we should believe in those. So to say this rational egoism is to say that the only thing that works there, the only assumption that works, is that you should benefit yourself. There are no other reasonable assumptions, right? But it seems like there would be other reasonable assumptions. So, for example, in a lot of Eastern asceticisms. So asceticism, by the way, is self-denial systems. This is in some Hindu sects and a lot of Buddhist sects. The idea is that the world is an illusion. You being separate from Brahman or separate from the world soul or something like that would be illusory. The evil in the world is due to you thinking that you are a separate being, right? And that is, I guess, a lot to take in on one objection. So just follow me, if you will. And if that's the case, then they say you should deny yourself, right? You should not benefit yourself, because then you're just feeding more into this illusion. You think that you're real. You think that all this physical stuff is real. None of it actually is real. What is real is Brahman, the world soul, and you are like a drop of water that's accidentally gotten away, and you need to return to it like a drop of water into the ocean, and then either cease to exist or something like that. So, in this view, it would seem our most rational choices would be to deny ourselves, and that's what these guys do. I mean, they get by on just like a handful of rice, meditate by the Ganges rivers in all kinds of weather with, just loincloths and ashes all over them. It's a rough life. Not one that I'd want, but, that's the whole point, is that not what you'd want, right? So, I'm not saying that's plausible, right? All I'm saying is that it's another possible reason that you could take, right? It's another possible assumption, and then from there, you can make choices that would be reasonable, right? So if rational egoism says the only possible rational choice that you can make is one that benefits yourself, well, here's another one, right? So this view wouldn't be correct. By the way, I think one thing that you could respond to that is if you go hardcore like that, right? If all of your reasons are to deny yourself, then you would die super quickly. And I think the response they could give to that would be to say, well, the same thing goes with self-benefit, right? I mean, we have gluttony limits. You benefit yourself only up to a certain point, because if you keep going, then it would be detrimental to yourself. If it's good for you to eat, but only up to a certain point, and then after that, you could kill yourself if you just keep going. In the same way, it's good for you to deny yourself, but if you deny yourself too much, then of course you'll kill yourself. So you set these limits so that you can continue to deny yourself and hopefully achieve samsara, or moksha, excuse me, from samsara. But that's a whole different thing. Anyway, so yeah, there's the first objection. A possible second objection is this: whether an action is rational depends on whether it achieves its goal, right? When we say what you're doing, a choice that you make to do something is rational, what we mean is rational in order to get you to some end, right? To get you to some purpose. So to say that rational action is would have to be self-benefiting is just psychological egoism, right? It's just to say that the only possible choice that you can make is to benefit yourself. That's the only choice you make. And we saw in an earlier video, I'll put a link in the description on that psychological egoism seems to be false. So if that's the case, then it seems like rational egoism is putting forth just the same thing, so that it would be false too. So those are two possible objections that you could give to rational egoism. I do think that there's a lot to this view. I don't think that we should just throw it out, but yeah, there's some things to consider about. And like I always say, I think the best philosophy happens in dialogue. So a couple of questions. What do you think about Dagny Taggart? Should she stick around? Should she leave? Are there other reasons for her to stick around? Especially if you've read the book, right? Comment below and tell me what you think. Like, it's a pretty gnarly book, right? So I would definitely check it out. Like I said, I'll have a video on that. Also, please subscribe, comment, like, etc., etc. And I'll see you later. Adios.